Have you ever witnessed a moment so raw and unexpected that your heart nearly leapt out of your chest? On an ordinary Monday morning at Greenwood Police Station in Louisville, Kentucky, a stray mother dog burst through the double-glass doors, leading her trembling puppies close behind. The officers inside were accustomed to dealing with tense, chaotic situations, but this was different. A hush fell over the station as everyone noticed the desperation in the mother dog's eyes. This was no routine complaint or lost wallet report. In that instant, an extraordinary bond was formed, and what happened next would leave everyone speechless. It was mid-October in Louisville, Kentucky, when the winds carried the crisp promise of autumn. Morning sunlight streamed through the steel-rimmed windows of the Greenwood Police Station. People bustled in and out, officers, staff members, and civilians, each immersed in their own routines. The station itself was a modest, boxy structure of brick and glass, but inside, a flurry of activity hummed along. A phone rang incessantly at the front desk. An agitated visitor paced back and forth with a citation in hand, and a fresh recruit tried to find her bearings in the labyrinth of offices and hallways. Officer Caleb Murphy had just settled behind his desk, a steaming coffee in hand. He was a lean man in his mid-30s, with a determined glint in his eyes. He'd grown up on the outskirts of Louisville, enamored with stories of heroes in uniform since he was a kid. His colleagues knew him for his calm demeanor, his meticulous attention to detail, and, most of all, his empathy for those in need, even if those happened to have 4 legs. That morning, as Caleb sifted through an array of paperwork, a petty theft report, 2 missing person notices, and a list of pending calls, he couldn't have anticipated how drastically his day would change. Just as he was about to take a sip of coffee, a frantic bark echoed from across the station's lobby. It wasn't the typical commotion from a disgruntled citizen or a scuffle. Instead, it was the unmistakable high-pitched yelp of a dog in distress. Curious, Caleb set his coffee aside and stepped out to investigate, weaving through the desks. Several officers had stood up too. Deputy Martinez, who was known to keep a canine figurine on his desk, looked up with as much wonder as the others. Someone exclaimed, "A dog just ran inside." Indeed, a large, slender, mud-stained mother dog, her fur a patchwork of brown and white, was near the entrance. She looked scruffy, her ribs faintly visible under her coarse coat. But more strikingly, a small brood of puppies trailed behind her. Each one seemed frightened, pressing close to their mother, tails tucked between their legs. This pack of canines, hunched in fear and confusion, captured the station's full attention. The front desk officer, a kind-faced woman named Lucy Perkins, was the first to approach. She crouched down, arms outstretched in a gentle, non-threatening manner. The mother dog regarded Lucy with big round eyes that shimmered with apprehension and vulnerability. It was as if the animal was saying, "Please help me. I have nowhere else to go." Caleb moved closer and knelt beside Lucy. He'd handled stray animals before, cats, dogs, even a startled raccoon once, but never had a dog voluntarily come into the police station, puppies in tow. He carefully extended his hand toward the mother dog's snout, allowing her to sniff. She didn't growl or snap. If anything, she appeared relieved that someone was taking notice. Her puppies lingered behind her, trembling with every step. One was mostly white, another boasted patches of black, and the runt had a single brown spot over his right eye. It was then that Caleb noticed the dog's paw was bleeding slightly. The mother dog tried not to put too much weight on it, and each step left a small dot of blood against the tile floor. Concern tightened in his chest. "Hey there, girl," he whispered softly. "We got you. Don't worry." The mother dog let out a feeble wag of her tail, and a wave of compassion surged through Lucy and Caleb and across the entire room. Whatever bureaucratic tasks had been occupying the station moments earlier seemed inconsequential now. The dog needed help, and instinctively the officers knew they couldn't turn her and her puppies away. Caleb quickly radioed the precinct's resource manager to request immediate help, maybe from a local animal shelter or veterinarian. As they waited, Lucy hurried to the break room and returned with a plastic bowl of water. Another officer rummaged through the cabinets until he found an unopened bag of Purina dog chow left over from a previous donation drive. The mother dog lapped up the water with desperation, letting her puppies nuzzle around her legs. Deputy Martinez arrived with a tattered blanket from the trunk of his patrol car, draping it gently over the mother dog's back. Though it was a small gesture, it hinted at the unfolding tapestry of compassion that would define that day and the days to come. Everyone wanted to do something to make the dog and her puppies feel safe and cared for. The dogs, in their ragged, malnourished state, seemed to sense that they had stumbled upon more than a station of rules and badges. They had found a community of protectors, perhaps even friends. No one suspected that this humble act of kindness, welcoming a family of dogs seeking refuge, would become the catalyst for a series of events that would transform lives, resurrect hope, and forge unbreakable bonds. Soon, both officers and townspeople alike would find themselves drawn into an extraordinary tale of resilience, connection, and personal growth. Even as the mother dog settled on the blanket, her puppies instinctively began to nurse. Pushing their small bodies against her belly, Caleb could see the strain in her eyes. She was hungry, exhausted, and protective all at once. He gingerly examined her bleeding paw, noticing a deep gash that looked like it might have come from a piece of glass or sharp metal. The mother dog whimpered softly when he pressed near the wound, but she didn't resist. Her trust, so freely given, humbled him. The station staff immediately began discussing next steps: who would take the mother dog to the vet, who would handle the puppies, and whether there was an available kennel nearby. Lucy volunteered to search for a local veterinarian who could see the dog immediately, and Deputy Martinez stepped away to call a few of his contacts. In the meantime, the entire station seemed to revolve around the dog family's needs. People offered more food, though Caleb cautioned them not to overfeed the hungry mother too quickly, lest it upset her stomach. Another officer found a shallow cardboard box and lined it with an old towel, hoping the puppies would cuddle up inside. They scattered about the station's front lobby, sniffing corners and occasionally yelping if separated from their mother for too long. Caleb couldn't recall ever feeling so drawn to an animal's plight. Sure, he'd responded to stray animal calls in his career, but there was something different about this mother dog. Her eyes, an earnest shade of amber, held a quiet determination. She had marched into a bustling police station as though guided by an invisible beacon of hope or desperation, or both. This was an animal that refused to give up on finding help, even when the world outside had offered her so little. An hour later, Dr. Margot Willis, a local veterinarian, arrived. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with silvering hair pinned back in a low bun. Over the years, she'd partnered with the Greenwood police on various rescue efforts, and she never charged the station for emergency visits. Caleb greeted her and guided her to the mother dog, Dr. Willis set her medical bag on a desk, then crouched down to examine the bleeding paw, gently inspecting each of the puppies in turn. They look about 6 or 7 weeks old, Dr. Willis said, thoughtfully running her hand down the smallest puppy's back. Mum's underweight, but not dangerously so. With proper nutrition and care, I think she'll rebound just fine. Her wound is a little deeper than I'd like, but it should heal with stitches and antibiotics. Caleb nodded, relieved. That's great news. Do you think we should take her to your clinic? I can do the stitches here, Dr. Willis replied. Then I'll recommend you bring her in for a more thorough checkup tomorrow. The puppies, too. Lucy brought a second bowl of water for the vet to wash her hands, and with practiced efficiency, Dr. Willis cleaned the wound, applied a local anesthetic, and stitched it closed. Through it all, the mother dog trembled but never tried to snap or run away. It was as if she knew these strangers were trying to help her. When the medical care was done, Dr. Willis stood and offered a warm smile. "She's a brave one. I can't help but wonder what she's been through. The puppies, too, some are scuffed up, as if they've been outdoors for quite some time." Caleb sighed, imagining the dangers they must have faced: cold nights, lack of food, predators, and fast-moving cars. "We'll take care of her, of all of them," he promised. "We just need to figure out the next step." At that moment, Deputy Martinez returned with news. "I've called all the local shelters," he said, frowning. "They're completely full. I've got one or two leads, but it doesn't sound promising. They're already struggling to find space for other rescues." A hush fell over the group. The Greenwood police station certainly couldn't keep a mother dog and her puppies indefinitely, but no one had the heart to turn them back onto the streets. It just wasn't an option. "We could set them up in the staff garage for a night, maybe two," Lucy suggested. "At least until we figure out a better place for them." Caleb watched the dogs, noticing how the mother eyed him as she pressed her puppies closer, as if wanting to keep them safe in this uncertain environment. He swallowed hard. He had a modest apartment on the opposite side of town, with a strict landlord who wasn't exactly open to tenants bringing in animals. Still, letting them spend the night in a cold staff garage. The thought made him uneasy. Before he fully realized what he was saying, he found himself volunteering. I could take them home," he began, feeling a rush of nerves. "At least for a few days. I'll need to clear it with my landlord, but maybe if I explain the situation, he'll let me keep them temporarily." The relief on Lucy's face was palpable. "Oh, that would be wonderful. I can pitch in for supplies. We'll all help." Caleb nodded, already mentally rehearsing the argument he'd give his landlord. Maybe if he stressed how it was a short-term arrangement, or if he offered to pay an extra deposit, the landlord would relent. As the day progressed, Caleb made phone calls, filled out extra forms, and arranged with Dr. Willis for a follow-up checkup. Meanwhile, he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for the entire Greenwood team. They were so much more than just officers and administrative staff. Today, they were guardians of a small family in desperate need. At last, near the end of his shift, the mother dog was comfortably resting in a large kennel on the station's rear porch, the puppies drowsy and curled up at her belly. Caleb had borrowed a crate, a few towels, and enough food to get them through the night. He had also spoken to his landlord, Mr. Redmond, who grudgingly agreed to let the dog stay for no more than a week. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Before leaving for the day, Lucy and Martinez helped Caleb load the crate into his truck. They each offered reassurances. "We'll figure out something more permanent," Lucy said. "And who knows? Maybe someone will come forward wanting to adopt them." Caleb nodded as he carefully shut the tailgate. "Thank you both for helping." The drive home felt surreal. Caleb glanced in the rearview mirror at the mother dog, who stared back at him through the crate. Her puppies were asleep, piled on top of one another in a fuzzy heap. The mother's eyes were no longer filled with desperation. Instead, they held a cautious hope. When he finally arrived at his apartment complex, a squat, grey building with minimal landscaping, he was able to wrestle the crate upstairs with surprising ease, adrenaline fueling each step. Once inside, he spread out old blankets on the living room floor and allowed the mother dog and her puppies to roam. They sniffed around the furniture, an old sofa, a rickety coffee table stacked with police reports, before deciding to settle near the window, where a warm shaft of evening light filtered through. Caleb gazed at them, feeling a sense of wonder. He had never considered himself a dog person, but in that moment, as he watched the mother dog nurse her puppies in the glow of a fading autumn sun. He felt a tug at his heartstrings he couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the dog's unwavering trust in humans, despite whatever hardships she'd faced. Or maybe it was the puppy's wide-eyed innocence. Either way, their presence changed the entire apartment's atmosphere, making the small space feel more alive, more hopeful. He bent down and gently patted the mother dog's head. She leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting shut as if she finally felt safe. In that moment, Caleb silently vowed to help these dogs, no matter what. Little did he know, this promise would be the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test his resolve, deepen his compassion, and ultimately teach him that sometimes the ones we rescue end up rescuing us right back. By the next morning, an entirely new routine had taken shape in Caleb's life. He rose before dawn, mindful of the whimpers and little yips coming from the living room. When he stepped out of his bedroom, the mother dog wagged her tail in greeting, as though grateful he hadn't abandoned them during the night. The puppies rolled around, tangling themselves in the blankets, tumbling over each other in awkward but endearing play. Caleb crouched down beside them, letting the tiny pups sniff his fingers. He felt like a giant in their world, yet they showed no fear, only curiosity. He realized they would need to go outside soon, so he slipped into a pair of sweatpants, called Mr. Redmond, to confirm the arrangement was still fine, then gingerly carried the puppies one by one down the apartment's narrow stairs. The mother followed, limping slightly on her stitched-up paw. Outside, the early morning air was chilly, and the grass sparkled with dew. The puppies, having known only uncertain terrain and cracked pavement before, seemed mesmerized by the soft lawn. He fed them a measured amount of Purina dog chow Dr. Willis had recommended. The mother dog ate greedily, then wagged her tail in thanks. As he watched her, Caleb wondered how she'd acquired her maternal instincts, how she knew, day after day, to protect her young. She had braved the unknown and sought out a police station for help. There was something remarkable in that, as if fate or intuition had guided her to the very place where compassion could be found. That afternoon, during his shift at Greenwood, Caleb updated Lucy and Deputy Martinez on the dog's progress. Over lunch, they gathered around a desk, looking at pictures Caleb had snapped with his phone, images of the puppies wrestling on the blanket, of the mother dog lying contentedly in a patch of sunlight. The officers cooed over how adorable they were, and Lucy quipped, "You know, you're a natural with them. Have you thought about keeping one?" Caleb chuckled nervously. "I'm not sure my lifestyle really fits a dog, especially not a litter of them, but I do feel attached, more than I expected." He didn't elaborate, but in truth, he was already noticing changes in himself. He woke earlier, felt more responsible and purposeful, and even found a gentle joy in caring for these vulnerable creatures. They needed him, but he realized he needed them too. Over the next few days, the dogs became minor celebrities around the station. Word spread that a mother dog had run into Greenwood Police Station seeking help, and the story resonated with the public. Officers who had previously bonded only over coffee breaks or weekend sports talk now had a new topic of conversation, one that cut through the everyday stress of law enforcement. People asked for updates, offered to donate food, or simply wanted to peek at new puppy photos. It was a welcome shift in tone, a reminder that their job, at its core, was about helping others. Still, the question of what would become of the dogs weighed heavily on Caleb. Several shelters remained at capacity, and those with room had policies limiting the intake of nursing mothers. One day, as he was finishing his shift, Lucy caught him in the hallway. Her face was bright with excitement. "So, I made some calls," she said, "and guess what? The local news station heard about the story. They want to run a segment on you and the dogs. Maybe it'll inspire someone to adopt them or offer a foster home." Caleb's eyes widened. "Local news? I'm not exactly a fan of being on camera." Lucy laughed. "You don't have to be the star. Let the dogs do the work. People love a heartwarming story, and if it helps find them a good home, why not? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. Anything for these pups. Sure enough, 2 days later, a small camera crew from WLKY arrived at the station. The reporter, a cheerful woman named Marla Jacobs, interviewed Caleb and Lucy outside the station's brick facade. Caleb described how the mother dog limped in, injured and malnourished, and how they'd all come together to help her and her puppies. The camera lingered on the mother dog, who was carefully brought in for the interview, and captured the puppies tumbling around her feet. Marla ended the segment with an impassioned appeal for adoption and fostering. The broadcast aired that same evening, and by the following morning, calls started pouring into Greenwood Police Station. People from all over Louisville and even neighboring counties wanted more information. Some folks were outraged at the dog's circumstances, demanding the station investigate whoever had abandoned her. Others were touched and simply wanted to offer support or supplies. And, most promisingly, a few local families expressed real interest in taking in one of the puppies once they were old enough. Caleb was overwhelmed by the reaction. He fielded phone calls in between responding to a burglary report and a traffic accident, all the while trying not to lose track of the day's tasks. Lucy tried her best to triage the calls, jotting down phone numbers, addresses, and references. Even the mother dog, who they'd nicknamed Hope, became a minor celebrity in the station. Officers strolled by to offer a quick pat or scratch behind her ears whenever Caleb brought her in for checkups with Dr. Willis. One day, as he gathered the puppies to bring them for their shots, Lucy waved him over with an excited grin. "You're never going to believe this," she said, handing him the phone. "A woman named Ellen Roth just called. She runs a dog sanctuary outside the city limits. They specialize in rescued mothers with litters. She said she wants to help." Caleb's heart soared. A sanctuary? That sounded perfect. He took a deep breath and dialed the number. When Ellen picked up, her voice carried a warmth that instantly set him at ease. She explained that the sanctuary, called Forever Fields, had open space and specialized care for mother dogs and newborn pups. They had a partnership with local vet clinics and boasted large outdoor runs for exercise and socialization. "I saw you on the news," Ellen confessed. "That mother dog's eyes, they just spoke to me. I'd love to take her and the puppies in, if you'll allow it. We'll get them all spayed or neutered when they're ready, and then find them loving homes." Though relief coursed through him, a strange twinge of sadness tugged at Caleb's chest. He'd grown close to the dogs, especially Hope. He dreaded the day he'd have to let them go, but he knew Ellen's sanctuary was likely the best solution. The mother dog and her litter deserved a place where they wouldn't have to worry about rent restrictions or cramped living quarters. "That sounds amazing," Caleb said quietly. "I'm grateful for your offer. Let's set up a time for me to bring them out so we can see the place and talk details." When he hung up, Lucy noticed the mix of joy and sorrow in his expression. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You did it. You found them a real chance at a better life." "Yeah," he murmured, forcing a smile. "I guess that's the point, right? Making sure they're safe and cared for." She nodded. "And who knows, maybe you'll adopt one of the puppies later if you feel ready." He chuckled softly, unwilling to dismiss the possibility. "We'll see." The week leading up to the move to Forever Fields was a whirlwind. Caleb arranged for the final vet visits, ensuring Hope was healing well from her paw injury and that all the puppies received necessary vaccinations. He found himself reflecting on how drastically his routine had changed. He woke up early for walks, scheduled midday checkups, and came home to feed and clean up after the dogs. But there was something deeply satisfying about it, a sense of purpose that transcended paperwork and police reports. Amid all this, Caleb received a phone call from his younger sister, Lara, who lived in Indianapolis. They'd been close once, but drifted apart after their parents passed away. Caleb rarely opened up about his personal struggles, but something about caring for Hope and her puppies had softened him. He found himself sharing details about the mother dog's bravery, how she'd marched into the station and effectively saved her puppies. "To be honest," he said into the phone, "I think she rescued me as much as I rescued her. All my life, I've been so focused on my job, and I forgot how to really be present for myself or for others. It's like this dog taught me how to care again." Lara listened quietly, then said, "I'm happy for you, Caleb. You sound better than you have in a long time. Maybe you should visit me when you get a chance. Bring the dog if you still have her." He smiled at the thought. "I might take you up on that, sis." On the day, Caleb planned to drive Hope and the puppies to Forever Fields. A small group of officers gathered in the station's parking lot. Lucy handed Caleb a basket filled with blankets, toys, and a small donation of dog treats from the staff. Deputy Martinez gave Caleb a pat on the back. "You did good, man. I'm proud of you." "Thanks," Caleb replied, feeling a twinge of emotion. "I couldn't have done any of this without everyone here." Hope had grown stronger in the past week. Her limp was barely noticeable, and her coat had a healthier sheen. She watched with mild curiosity as officers and admin staff crouched down to say their goodbyes, each giving a final scratch or pat to her puppies. They were growing quickly, no longer timid bundles of fur but inquisitive little explorers. Carefully, Caleb loaded them into a roomy travel crate in the back of his truck. Hope jumped in without protest, and the puppies scampered around her, tails wagging. As he pulled away from the station, he caught a glimpse in his rear-view mirror of Lucy waving goodbye. Emotion welled up inside him, surprising him with its intensity. Forever Fields was located just outside the city limits, a sprawling piece of farmland dotted with fenced-in enclosures and small, cozy barns. Rows of green grass stretched out with tall oaks providing ample shade. It was, in a word, idyllic. Ellen met him at the entrance, wearing jeans, sturdy boots, and a welcoming smile. She led Caleb through the sanctuary. He saw dozens of dogs, some romping in fenced yards, others napping under trees, and a few newly rescued litters waiting in enclosed pens to be old enough for adoption. Everywhere he looked, there were signs of life and hope: water bowls, chew toys, staff members tending to each dog's needs, volunteers strolling around, ensuring every tail received a friendly wag in return. Ellen explained the sanctuary's structure, how each dog received individual attention, how potential adopters were screened thoroughly, and how a special maternity ward existed for mother dogs to nurse and bond with their puppies in safety. Caleb felt a wave of relief, but also a pang of yearning. He could see that this place was indeed perfect for Hope and her puppies. He carried the crate to a private pen Ellen had prepared. Inside, straw bedding lined a sheltered corner. There was a covered area to protect them from the elements and a small yard for daytime play. Once he set the crate down, Hope stepped out, her nose twitching as she sniffed her new surroundings. The puppies tumbled out after her, chasing each other across the straw. Ellen laughed softly. "They look right at home already," she remarked. Then her tone turned gentle. "You can visit them any time you want. I can't guarantee they'll stay here forever because I expect them to be adopted quickly once they're old enough. But you're always welcome." Caleb knelt beside Hope and rubbed the fur behind her ears. She leaned into his touch and let out a soft huff of contentment. He felt a lump in his throat, as though saying goodbye was far harder than he had anticipated. "You be good, okay?" he whispered. "You're safe now. No more running around looking for help. You found it." Hope stared up at him with those amber eyes, then gave a single, slow wag of her tail. It felt like she understood. As he stood to leave, a mix of gratitude, sadness, and relief churned in his gut. On the drive back to his apartment, the silence in his truck felt jarring. No soft yips, no mother-dog panting, no joyful chaos from half a dozen puppies. The emptiness stung. That night, Caleb struggled to sleep. He'd grown accustomed to the small noises that came from having 7 dogs in his living room. Now, the silence pressed in on him. Restless, he got out of bed and paced around, remembering the first time the mother dog had limped into the station, how she'd gazed at him with silent pleas for help. He thought of the puppies, so full of life, how they'd toddle around on wobbly legs, piling onto one another in a playful tumble. Did he do the right thing? He believed so. But it didn't erase the ache of saying goodbye. In the morning, he rose early and found himself uncertain of what to do with the extra time. So he did the only thing that felt right. He got into his truck and drove back to Forever Fields to visit them. When he arrived, he found them playing in a fenced area with a staff member. The puppies barreled into his legs, tongues lolling as soon as he stepped inside. Hope trotted over, pressing her snout gently to his knee. The relief that coursed through him was immediate, as though an unseen weight had lifted. Ellen appeared, smiling. "Good morning. I had a feeling you'd be back. I just wanted to make sure they're okay," he said, though he suspected she saw right through him. "They're more than okay," she reassured him, "but I'm glad you came." They chatted for a while, watching the puppies chase each other in circles. By the time Caleb left, he felt lighter, as though a piece of him had been stitched back together. He made it a habit to visit them on his days off. Each time, he noticed improvements. Hope put on more weight, her coat grew sleeker, and the puppies transformed from fragile fluff balls into spirited bundles of energy. In between visits, life returned to a semblance of normal for Caleb. He resumed his usual patrols and paperwork, but with a difference. He felt more open, more attuned to the small, everyday blessings. He even reached out to Lara more often, strengthening their sibling bond. His colleagues at Greenwood Station teased him good-naturedly about turning into the police dog whisperer, but he took it in stride, grinning each time he showed off new pictures of the pups. As autumn bled into the fringes of winter, the puppies grew strong and boisterous. Each one developed distinct markings and personalities. The largest pup, a sturdy male with specks of brown on his ears, was fearless and loved to chase leaves. The runt, with her single brown spot over her right eye, displayed a calm, observant nature. One by one, families who visited Forever Fields fell in love with them. Adoptions began. Caleb felt torn, both thrilled that the puppies were finding forever homes and heavy-hearted with the knowledge that he might never see them again. Still, he found comfort in the fact that each adoption was carefully vetted. Ellen and her team made sure every puppy went to a home that could provide love, care, and security. And for those who stayed local, Ellen promised to share updates if the new families allowed it. One sunny Saturday, Caleb arrived at the sanctuary to find that 4 of the puppies had already been adopted that morning. Only 2 pups remained, along with Hope, who was still healing her emotional wounds. The mother dog had been spayed the week before, and though she'd physically recovered, well, it appeared she was restless each time one of her puppies left. She'd wander the pen, sniffing every corner as though searching for them. Caleb watched her amble around, a pang of sympathy in his chest. "Does she seem okay?" he asked Ellen, who was busy preparing bowls of fresh water. "She's adjusting," Ellen said. "It's natural for a mother dog to feel anxious when her pups leave. But they're old enough to be on their own, and she's done her job. She'll find her own forever home soon, too." Indeed, later that day, a young couple visited the sanctuary and took a keen interest in one of the remaining puppies. As they played with the pup, Caleb noticed the mother dog watching from a distance, her expression inscrutable. He felt compelled to kneel beside her, stroking her back. She leaned into him, letting out a soft whine. "It's okay," he whispered. "They're going to good homes." "You did a great job." The mother dog leaned her head against his chest, and he found himself resting his cheek on her soft fur. Despite only knowing each other for a matter of weeks, the connection between them felt profound. This was the dog who'd hobbled into a police station, who'd taught him more about resilience and trust than he ever thought possible. As the couple made their final decision on the puppy, Caleb faced his own inner turmoil. He couldn't bear the thought of Hope living out her days without a permanent home or a family to love her. While part of him wished to adopt her right then and there, he knew his landlord's situation remained precarious. Yet the pull was strong. He rose and glanced at Ellen. "I know I might not be able to keep her, but is there a way I can foster Hope at my apartment? At least until she finds a permanent home." Ellen smiled. "We can try if your landlord is willing. The adoption process for an adult dog might take a little longer than it did for the puppies. But if you're sure, I'm sure," he said, though an edge of anxiety nibbled at him. "I'll talk to my landlord. Maybe the story in the news will help sway him." And so began Caleb's second quest, persuading Mr. Redmond to allow him to foster Hope. It took multiple phone calls, an in-person meeting, and even a small deposit. But eventually, the landlord agreed on the condition that it remained a foster arrangement and that if any damage occurred, Caleb would be liable. The day he brought Hope back to his apartment, her tail wagged in cautious anticipation. She sniffed every corner, as though recalling faint memories from her last time there. Caleb arranged a cozy bed for her, though she preferred to curl up on a rug near the couch. He purchased better dog food, chew toys, and even researched dog training techniques online. Their days settled into a warm routine. In the evenings, they walked the quiet streets around his apartment building. Hope, on a sturdy leash, held her tail high, ears pricked as though she wanted to take in every scent, every new sight. Sometimes they went by the local park, where small children would point and giggle at the dog with the bright eyes and shiny coat. Hope never barked at strangers. Instead, she gazed at them with gentle curiosity. At night, as Caleb dozed off, he was comforted by Hope's presence on the rug. She'd sigh contentedly, stretching her limbs. Each day, he felt his bond with her deepen, a quiet, steady companionship that made his apartment feel like a home. By mid-December, only one of Hope's puppies remained at the sanctuary, waiting for the perfect adopter. Caleb visited once a week, often bringing Hope along so they could spend time with the last pup. During these visits, he found himself chatting more and more with Ellen. They discovered a shared passion for nature and a mutual desire to help those in need, whether human or animal. They slowly transitioned from casual acquaintances into friends, and perhaps something more. Yet, as the weeks passed, it became clear that no one had yet applied to adopt Hope. Potential adopters often gravitated toward younger dogs or puppies, leaving adult rescues like Hope overlooked. Through it all, Hope remained sweet, calm, and patient, as though she trusted that her time would come. Caleb wondered if her time had already come, and if it was with him. One windy evening, after a particularly challenging day at work dealing with a domestic dispute, he arrived home emotionally drained. Hope met him at the door, tail thumping against the floor. She licked his hand, sensing his fatigue. Caleb sank into the couch and closed his eyes. Moments later, he felt Hope's chin rest gently on his knee, her quiet presence offering comfort words could never replicate. He realized then that he loved her as much as a person could love a loyal companion. She had filled a space in his heart he hadn't known was empty. But a question loomed. Would he keep fostering her, or would he take the leap and adopt her for good? A few days later, he invited Lucy and Deputy Martinez over for dinner. They all joked about how a year ago, Caleb never even had a plant in his apartment, and now he was fostering a dog. Over dessert, Lucy raised her glass of soda in a mock toast. Here's to the hero of Greenwood Police Station, she teased, the man who saved a mother dog and got his heart stolen in return. Caleb blushed but laughed. Yeah, well, she's easy to love, so why not adopt her? Martinez prodded gently. Caleb sighed. I'm worried about the landlord. And what if something changes in my job? I don't want to be irresponsible. Lucy tapped his arm. I've seen how you look at her, Caleb. We all have. Sometimes you just have to take the leap. If it doesn't work out, you know she can always go back to Forever Fields. But let's be honest, this dog chose you. He swallowed hard, hearing the truth in Lucy's words. He remembered that first day, the battered mother dog stepping into the station, wounded yet determined. She had chosen to trust people when she had every reason not to, and from that moment on, she had chosen him too. That weekend, he returned to Forever Fields and sat down with Ellen to fill out the official adoption papers. His heart pounded in his chest as he signed his name, aware of the weight of this commitment, but also the joy. Ellen hugged him afterward, a congratulatory embrace that felt as though they had crossed a threshold together, forging a bond of friendship and more. When Caleb brought Hope home after the adoption, something had changed in the air. She wasn't just a temporary guest, she was now part of his life for good. He knelt beside her on the living room rug and rubbed her ears. A tear slipped down his cheek. We're a team now, he whispered. You and me, we're in this together. She gazed at him with those warm amber eyes, tail swishing gently on the floor, as if she understood every word. Hope's story began on a desperate day when she burst through the doors of Greenwood Police Station, seeking help for herself and her puppies. But in the end, her tale of resilience, trust, and quiet determination would change the hearts of an entire community, and most profoundly, the heart of Officer Caleb Murphy. Through countless challenges, moments of doubt, and the ultimate triumph of love, we've seen how one mother dog's courage can inspire compassion and connection, forging unbreakable bonds that transcend species. If this story moved you, please remember to hit that like button. Share it so others can experience the profound lessons Hope's journey has taught us, that a single act of kindness can ripple out to change many lives. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Your support helps us continue spreading hope and compassion one story at a time. Thank you for watching.